this black magic from my mama. Be innovative, yeah, that's what she taught me. Create the colors, make a masterpiece. And don't you worry what them haters think. Just take your time with it. You a boss, you a queen, you a diamond. Don't you be afraid of your ego. Wear it like a promise, this is your show. This is a black girl nation, a black girl creation, a black girl song for a black girl generation. Spinning in the gold of our ancestors, claim it. Got the magic flowing through our veins, you can shame it. Name a better species in the game, you can name it. Black girl nation. Our backs tell the story of history on the spines. We make up the cosmos, we make us up in kind. Don't know who you mess with, you better step aside. These black girl aesthetics is spin to blow your mind. We're so divine with it. Change the game, switch up the roles, put the shine in it. And don't you be afraid of our ego. Welcome to the planet, this is our show. This is a black girl nation, a black girl creation, a black girl song for a black girl generation. Spinning in the gold of our ancestors, claim it. Got the magic flowing through our veins, you can shame it. Name a better species in the game, you can name it. Black girl nation. We live in a world where they don't want us to be alive. Sometimes it gets hard to be yourself, let alone to thrive. But this is a message to remind you who you truly are. Just sending up the sun, the lightning in the stars. This is a black girl nation, black girl creation. We're lighting in the stars. Remember who you are. This is a black girl nation, black girl creation. We're spinning in the gold. This black girl magic flow. This is a black girl nation, black girl creation. We're lighting in the stars. Remember who you are. This is a black girl nation, black girl creation. We're spinning in the gold. This black girl magic flow.
From a different continent, I packed a bag in confidence. I didn't come for compliments, oh no. A couple decades working late, 100 no's, 100 fails. That's what it takes to elevate someone. And now I use a high IQ to get the check. Don't spend it on some stupid kitty flex. I prove nothing to no one but myself. Nah, I'm looking inside me and I love what I see. I'm a grown fucking woman and I don't give a shit what you think about me. I'ma keep it moving and I don't give a shit what you think about me. I'm a grown fucking woman. I'm a grown fucking woman. Honey, I'm a grown fucking woman. Don't talk while I'm trying to talk. Still the time to get it right, to plant the seeds and get them right. But finally I'm growing on my growing thing. Every insecurity is fading out cause I see the full me. And she was worth the wait. Now I use that high IQ to get the check. Don't spend it on some stupid kitty flex. I prove nothing to no one but myself. Now I'm looking inside me and I love what I see. I'm a grown fucking woman and I don't give a shit what you think about me. I'ma keep it moving and I don't give a shit what you think about me. I'm a grown fucking woman. I'm a grown fucking woman. Honey, I'm a grown fucking woman. Don't talk while I'm trying to talk. I don't bother bully, need my head 100. Got a bit of fun and hits a cutter on my own republic. I can't relate on my philosophy precludes me from being a fake. Call me Draco and I slither in a McDo. Scars gouged by the double-headed eagle. I'm bound when the rednecks kill my ego. Vision, I got vision, they don't see the shit I'm seeing. But in the end, that's what separates the girls from the women. I'm a grown fucking woman and I don't give a shit what you think about me. I'm a grown fucking woman. Don't talk while I'm trying to talk. Don't talk while I'm trying to talk. Talk while I'm trying to talk. Don't talk while I'm trying to talk.
I'm the source, stay the course, start revolution. The teacher, I know my worth. I'm evolution, no ego. Where we go, always grow. Yeah, we know, and I know that it blows your mind. Yeah, it blows your mind. How do I do it? So effortlessly. How do I do it? In my sleep. How do I do it? You know that it comes from within. Nothing can stop me now, 'cause I was built for greatness. I was built for greatness. And I keep rising up, rising up, rising up, rising up. I got the power, 'cause I was built for greatness. Greatness, greatness, greatness. I'm the ruler, I'm the giver, I'm the leader. Yeah. I'm the dreamer, I'm the future, I'm the keeper. Yeah. You never see me without my crown. I go high when they try to bring me down. And I know that it blows your mind. It blows your mind. How do I do it? So effortlessly. How do I do it? In my sleep. How do I do it? You know that it comes from within. Nothing can stop me now, 'cause I was built for greatness. I was built for greatness. And I keep rising up, rising up, rising up, rising up. I got the power, 'cause I was built for greatness. La 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 la. 'Cause I was built for greatness. I was built for greatness. Rising up, rising up, rising up, rising up. I got the power, 'cause I was built for greatness.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Resident Internet Second Medium and Spiritual Advisor, Mr. Crane. How you guys doing? How you doing? Let me know if the feed and the sound is okay. This is the part where I would usually say, how was your weekend? But it's Wednesday, and I have a little bit of explaining to do when it comes to that, but that's okay. We'll get to that. Come on in. Come on in. How you guys doing? Let me know if you can see and hear me. Awesome. Awesome. How you guys doing? So look, I have a little bit of explaining to do. I know we said Mondays. I don't think that that's going to be the case anymore. Let me tell you why. I have realized that Mondays don't work for me. And so, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do it on Mondays anymore. And I think the reason for that is just that Monday it's just really busy. Like things sort of like pile up over the weekend. If it's like a day where like, maybe I like got off of work late, or I'm doing something, but I just find that things on Monday just pile up and then I'm like really busy. And then making it to this chair on time is like a problem for me, And so we're just not going to do that because if it makes my life harder, then why would I do something like that? That doesn't make any sense. Then Tuesdays, for some reason, that doesn't work anyway. So we're just going to like hop around the week until I find a day. And so right now it's going to be Wednesdays. Is it going to stay as a Wednesday? I don't know. But is it a Wednesday today? It is a Wednesday today. And we're just going to kind of roll with that. Love how fast the intro was. It was very fitting for Mars just stepping into Gemini. Happy to see you. Happy to see you. Hey, guys. You are in the building, and I am happy to have you in the building. I hope you guys are having a good week. Trump wasn't. Too soon? Is it too soon to start cracking jokes? Is it too soon to start cracking jokes? Here's the thing. I remember in like 2015, I was like, someone's going to try to kill that man. And, but it didn't happen. And I'm not talking about when he would like went in like as president, because we all know that like that's what happens when you're as a president. Like as a president, they always have assassination attempts. But I remember when he was a candidate, I'm like, oh, someone's gonna try to kill that man, but then no one did, and so I just moved on. I went, oh, all right, well, I guess I was wrong. Turns out I got the election wrong. I got which election it was going to be, huh? So there they go. My question. I just don't understand how a 20-year-old can outsmart Secret Service. And I also don't really understand how it could take a minute and 57 seconds of people actively standing there, watching him pointing, telling law enforcement, and still like nothing was done. Have any of you actually interacted with Secret Service before? I have. Any of you live in DC? Like, do any of you like live in Washington, D.C. and then you wanted to leave your house at the same time the president wanted to leave his house, and then like what that looks like in D.C. and how like if you are a split second too late, everything is shut down and then you are dealing with Secret Service? Any of you visit the White House, even for a tour? And like maybe you were just outside taking photos of of the pearly white walls or whatever. Did you see Secret Service? And for those of you that are like, I didn't see Secret Service, they saw you. The snipers did. If you look up, there's snipers on like all of the roofs. Secret Service is pretty hardcore. I've also had some interactions with them, not because of whatever, look, whatever. I have a former career, okay? And so you just come into contact with people. And I'm gonna tell you something. They're really well trained, and the point where like I don't know if I feel comfortable. Are they law enforcement? I don't know if I would actually feel comfortable calling them that, because it's like that's like how good they are, and like how well trained they are, and how on the market they are, and they move with a different kind of energy than like standard law enforcement. They move with a different kind of energy than like the military. They, in my opinion, do not compare, right? Like the energies of both of them, they just don't compare. Like these are like pretty intense people, like really intense people. And so it's just weird to me. I don't know if I think it's weird or a little convenient that they all could miss a 20-year-old. But I don't want to spread conspiracy theories on the internet. I'm just saying, I think that was a mighty convenient whoopsie, because the timelines have now shifted. And here is the part where it's fun as a psychic, because now I can see them. And the funniest thing is, everybody can see it, right? So it's not even like a special thing. Like everyone can see it. Poor Joe, his timeline has completely decreased. It's damn near not there. Now, here's the thing that's like really interesting though. I still see a third person running, and I'm really confused by that because I don't know what that means. and they are swearing up and down that they are still moving on with the vote and that the DNC is still moving on with the vote. So I don't really know what that's supposed to be. And I don't know who this third person is. I don't know how we get them. I don't know how we get there, but there's still a third timeline. And yeah. And I'd be surprised if we were even voting on Biden by the time we got to the end of it. So anyway, how do you guys feel about Donald Trump being president again? Shall we work on that? I feel like a lot of you guys can feel that. And I feel like a lot of you guys have kind of already sensed that that's where we're actually headed. You know? How do you feel about that Project 2025? Has any of you looked into that? If you haven't, you probably should. Because if Trump goes back in, that's going to be a problem. If you're a woman, it's a problem. If you're black, it's a problem. If you're gay, it's a problem. If you're an immigrant, it's a problem. If you are a teacher, it's a problem. If you are a doctor, it's a problem. If you've fallen into any of those categories, Project 2025 is a problem for you. So I hope you're actually looking into it. And, you know, assuming Trump goes back in, then, well, the process starts. And so here we are. Give it up for JD Vance, though. Trump's VP pick, which I actually find to be incredibly hilarious because I find him personally to be a really dangerous pick. And the reason why, not dangerous for Trump, but dangerous for the broader public. And the reason why I think it's dangerous for the broader public is because this man has no backbone. And I don't understand how you go from not liking Trump, being very vocal and public about not liking Trump, and then suddenly Trump is just a misunderstood man. I can tell you how he went from that. He was elected. That's how he went to that. By the way, you know he's only like a first-term senator, right? He hasn't actually been on the Hill for that long. And he's very green. And I have a sneaking suspicion that when he got to the Hill, Marjorie Taylor Greene was like, look, you better cut that shit out or we're going to have a problem. And so he did. His balls went back up in his body. And now this is why it's a problem for the broader public. He has already demonstrated that he does not have an ability to hold his own opinion when it comes to Trump. That he doesn't have an ability to hold his own opinions when it comes to the other Republicans. So that means if things are going wrong, which they are going to be, and if Trump is doing the wrong thing, which he will inevitably be doing, there is not going to be anyone to be like, hey, wait, maybe we should think about this. He's just going to let it happen. And because this man is so starved for approval, because that's really what it is, he just desperately wants to feel approved and accepted into like this group, and he wants to be at the lunch table. We have now got a situation where the VP is just desperate to please the person that he works for. And that's not going to help anybody at all, unless you are part of the overall agenda. And if you're part of the overall agenda, I suppose it's helpful because JD Vance would be a perfect scapegoat because he doesn't know how to stand tall and hold his backbone. I don't understand what would make anybody at all want to be Trump's VP, considering the fact that everyone that gets too close to him goes to jail and he doesn't. And like, have we not, like, is there not enough evidence already that like that man is, you can't really touch him? So why would you want to go in next to him where they would look at you next? Do you want to go through another election with the man that said that the other one was stolen? And as the VP, that's the role you want to have? And also, I find it really interesting that he's 39 and Trump is what, 77? There is no reason other than the fact that JD Vance was useful for Trump's end agenda that this even makes sense. Like, he's being used as a pawn, and I'm sure he probably knows it, but to be at the point where you want approval so bad that you're okay with it, and then you see everyone at the RNC clapping and cheering for him as if they're happy, you're going to tell me that this man has come in, he has been there for 2 years, these people were born on the Hill and they're willing to die on the Hill, and you got this one guy that's been there for 2 years who's now suddenly the nomination for VP, and everyone is happy for him? Okay. Because that's how it works in politics. That Sure. Sure. Yeah. hmm Yeah, I mean, totally believe it. Yeah, totally. I totally believe it. I totally believe that that just makes sense. So anyway, the country's going to hell in a handbasket. That's okay because we knew that. We've been knew that. And why I'm talking about it is because I I want to bring us back to something that we've always known in order to get us to where it is that we're going. And the reason why I want to do this is because this is a time where people start to get a little anxious, right? You start looking at the picks and you start realizing who's most likely to win. And then you start thinking about the rights that you may not have access to anymore and the freedoms that may be taken away from you, right? And then that can cause a little bit of anxiety. What do you think about the assassination attempt? I mean, honestly, I think a lot of things. I think that what I think the most is that I just found the timing really convenient, you know? It's right on the hills of Grandpa Joe coming to terms with his dementia. And there was also the RNC convention on Monday. And I just feel like it was a real convenient time window to serve an agenda. It served it well. I think that even if it was something that was totally real, that a lot of people understand that the shit just doesn't add up, that the timelines just don't add up. I don't understand how he was 20 years old and he got past Secret Service, like you're talking about some of the best and most highly trained men and women. And somehow this 20-year-old outsmarted everybody since like JFK. I don't, you reckon this kid didn't even go to college, I think. I think he was just like fresh out of high school. Like, I don't even, okay. I just find that really convenient. I found it really, really convenient. Um, I find it really convenient about how Secret Service is trying to say that it was outside of their perimeter control and that they were leaving it to law enforcement, as if law enforcement in like Podunk, Pennsylvania knows anything about how to deal with an assassin. Yeah, that sounds like something that they would be trained for. Um, I think that the job was done so carelessly that it looks fake. Um, I have been mighty entertained. Yeah, they say he was just outside of the perimeter, but my thing is like, okay, is that the technicality we're going to use for an assassin? Oh, I'm sorry, he was just outside of the perimeter, so I didn't get him. I mean, I know everyone told me about him, but because he wasn't in the perimeter, I'm Secret Service. My job is to protect the president, the would-be president, or the past president. And someone told me that there was a guy with a gun, but because he was just outside of the perimeter, I just went, oh, I'm sorry, I can't do anything about that. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like it's a stretch. And why was the perimeter so small? And also, there's like a lot of other things in terms of like when you watch it, you know, did anyone else notice that nobody ran? I don't know if it's the Queens in me or if I've lived in Atlanta too long, but like when you hear gunshots, like there's like this moment of panic where people try to get the hell out of there and like nobody moved. Nobody moved. There was like a lot of gunshots too, not just like one pop. It was just like an exchange. It was a back and forth situation. It was a kid on a roof holding a rifle and people seeing him with the gun, but nobody running. People walking closer to the building to get a better look, but nobody feeling the need to duck for cover. Nobody feeling the need to like preserve life. There are videos of people pointing at the building and someone is holding the hand of like a child that looks somewhere around the age of like 3-4 years old holding their hand. And there is no one is trying to like cover the child, cover the baby, run the baby out of there, get the baby out. They're holding the baby and then they're pointing, looking at the person with the gun. And I just don't like, no one's instinct kicked in. You see someone drop to the ground and then a Secret Service having a commotion and no one goes, I think it's time to go. Then Secret Service come running in with guns and then they're still drinking beer. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like it was a lot of just like not, you know. And then also too, the guy that got shot, unfortunately, in the stands, where'd that bullet come from? Who hit him? Because if the bullet is going that way, and then the counter team is going that way, but the guy in the bleacher was behind. Whose bullet hit the guy behind? They haven't told us that. You notice that? Because you would know which gun it came out of. But we haven't heard anything about which bullet hit that man. And then they cheered. Maybe they didn't know what gunshots sounded like. I think that's really cute, but we're talking about like rural Pennsylvania. They know what gunshots sound like because they're the ones shooting them. Like this is the area, this is like the group of constituents that are like fighting for gun rights. They know what it sounds like. You see that guy hold the beer where he was like, nope, it was a rifle. And they were like, oh, so it was a big gun? He was like, no, I said it was a rifle. No, I know what gun it is, sir. He's like holding a beer in the other hand. And he was like, no, it was a rifle. Like those people know what guns are. Like they know what, and they know what they sound like. They use them, you know? So like, I think that they would have, I think they knew exactly what happened. I also think it's really weird that Trump would stand up or anybody would stand back up. Like after you hear gunshots, isn't it instinct to stay ducked for a little bit of time to make sure the coast is clear? I'm not really sure why you would stand up and then just have your head just all out there. Like that's a bit weird. That I don't know. I'm not Secret Service. I'm not trained, not even close, but I'm gonna tell you something. I would be like this, cowering, like trying to protect my head. And I wouldn't be standing up all nonchalant. Trump had a real slow exit looking for his shoes. So I don't think that I would feel like shoes were that important at that time. I think I would have been like, fuck them shoes. Get me the fuck out of here. Like, what the fuck? I just, I don't think I don't think I would have pursued it that way. Yeah, it was weird. Secret Service looked like super confused. One of them, she bent down to pick up his hat, which again is like thoughtful and kind, but like, I don't know that I would care about a hat. Like, I'd be like, sir, this is your merch. We can get another one from the car. I don't think I would have prioritized clothing. It was just like super weird to like watch. It did look like he was in shock, right? Especially at the RNC. He did look sad. And I did do a reading on him right after out of curiosity. And it did come through that he was actually pretty sad. And that there was like this feeling of like he always knew people didn't like him. And people always threatened him because that's what happens if you are like a sitting president. But there was something about the fact that like someone actually took a shot at him that he found beyond offensive. But it was like an offensive. It wasn't like, oh my God, like, why would you? It was a feeling of being offended. It felt like offended. Like, why would you want to kill me? And then that sort of like he kind of steamrolled a little bit where he was like, do people not really like me? Is everyone staring at my face? So I do sense that there was actual like legitimate sadness that happened and a feeling of, oh my God, I could have actually just lost my life. But when I did see him at the RNC, he did look a little bit pouty. But I also would like to caution folks and remind people that the first job of this person is actor. This man was Hollywood first, and he acts. Okay, so I just want to remind folks that he had a first job and it wasn't president, right? And so there are some things that he does for like dramatic effect. And so, I think maybe the pout was a little bit poutier, stuff like that. And also remember that he's going to take this moment in history and he's going to ride this wave through the election. Okay. Just want to, I just want to put that there. Just want to put it out there. That's all. I do think look, I would look shook if I got shot at. I would not pop back up looking normal, I'll tell you that much. So yeah, I believe that he looked shook. And I believe it rocked his world. And I believe it's probably a moment where, okay, so internally, what I sense is actually going on with him. I do sense that there's a shift that's happening internally, but I'm not convinced yet that shift is going to be something that's going to translate outwardly. And because he has a persona and a style and like a leadership style, and it's a style that a lot of people have rallied behind, this sort of like, they call it strength. I don't know if I would call it that, but that's what they call it, whatever. But I do sense there's like the shift internally happening that's very spiritual. This idea that like death doesn't discriminate and that it can be anybody's time at anybody's moment. And this feeling of like that being like the first real evidence for him, because it could have ended his life, about how some people feel about him, not how everyone feels about him, because it's clear that obviously not everyone thinks this way, right? But a feeling about like how some people don't like him to this extent that they would actually want to do that to him. And so there is a lot of like he's like looking at things from a different perspective, and he is very introspective right now and very reflective right now, thinking about, well, what could I have done that was so triggering, right? But I do think that is it's his internal processes that he's actually going through at the moment, and I do think that he's going through it very much by himself. I don't think that like there's a whole lot of people around him that really know what he's thinking. I think people around him can see that he looks a bit more sad than usual and different things like that, and he may have said that he was sad, but in terms of like the depth of his mind right now, he isn't actually sharing it with anybody. But it's something that's really profound when your life is threatened on that level. Some people go through that in life. I know I have been in situations where my life has been threatened from me, and I've had, but I've never had it, not that I'm aware of, escalate to that point, but I definitely have had people say, oh, I plan on like throwing bullets. You know what I mean? Like I told you, I have a former career. Okay. And it's terrifying. It's very, and it does make you rethink life and rethink what's important. But I do think that this is something that he's dealing with on his own, just because he's got a lot going on right now. He's got all these cases. He's put on a really sort of brave front to get through all of these things. He seems to be knocking through them. I mean, so far it looks like he's winning, and then he knew he was going to be the nominee. He had to go through that process of being the nominee. And so I think it's just not, I don't know. No one wants to see someone. It's really weird how humans are and how humans treat other humans, in the sense that like you want to see strength from the person that is leading, but you don't like, and you want to see vulnerability, but not too vulnerable, because the truth of the matter is, if Trump is too vulnerable about exactly what his mental state is right now, they're not going to like it. Right. And so there's a little bit of game playing too that's happening there as well. But I don't think that it is enough to change how he moves externally. And the reason why that's the case is because spirituality takes a lot longer to move. So think about like your spiritual journey, and think about the first time you started to reflect, and first time you started to go, maybe I could do something differently. And then the amount of time that it took you to get to that point where you're like, I'm going to do it differently. The time in the middle, right? And for some of you, you're not yet on the other side of doing it differently. You're just sort of like contemplating that, right? And so it's the same thing. And so like his changes, it may not be quick. It may not, and to be quite honest with you, he's at an age where it may never happen. Right now, it's just profound thoughts. But I don't sense that his profound thoughts are anywhere near manifesting into some form of physical reality. It's just profound thoughts right now, you know? And, you know, everything else is still like they're still making game day decisions. So, you know, but how does that affect you? Well, it affects everybody. And the reason why it affects everybody is because if this man goes into office, and honestly, at this point, it looks like that's what's about to happen. If you are a woman, if you are black, or honestly, if you are any form of color whatsoever, if you speak another language, if your first language is not English, if you are gay, if you're a transgender, if you a teacher, a doctor, any of these people, like this, it will impact you because that is the plan. It's part of the agenda. That is part of the whole Project 2025 thing that they keep talking about, that Trump keeps trying to say, like, he doesn't know anything about it, even though he already started working on it the last time he was in office. And then when Biden came into office, he actually then had to go and repeal a number of the things that he actually did. So 2025 is actually a problem, and it literally will restrict the rights of all of those people in those classes. And that's just a part of it that I understand. It will impact everybody, right? It's going to impact the woman's body, the woman's right to choose. And this is actually what I'm seeing like long term about that is if he goes into office and then they start working on all of this legislation and passing on these laws again, what's going to happen is that it's actually going to have the reverse effect. So for example, if they figure out how to completely outlaw abortion, right? So it's not legal in any of these states, or it's some sort of federal like crime to like travel to a different state or whatever. What's going to end up happening in about 3-4 years is that it's going to have the opposite effect of what people thought it would actually have. So these men that are like, yeah, you know, we're saving life, you know, and the population, you know, it's going to have the opposite impact. The impact is actually going to be a decline in the population as a whole. And so what's going to happen is that you're going to start in about 3-4 years from now, you're going to start hearing about how the birth rate is decreasing and the population is at a standstill and that it's on the verge of collapse because there's all these boomers and then we got these young folks, but then they're not replacing the population and things like that. And then there's going to be like this sort of, well, it's going to look like chaos, but it's not really going to be chaos because we already know that it's going to happen, right? About like, what do we do? Like, how do we save Americans and how do we save America because we're not reproducing at a level to replace what we are right now? And the reason for that is just because like people are going to start rethinking reproduction in the sense of not that people decide suddenly that they don't want to reproduce or that they don't want children. It's going to have a different effect where people are going to say, I don't want to die. So you're going to have women saying, I actually really don't want to die. Like, I would love a child, but I'm going to die. What if I die in the process? And I'm really afraid that I'm going to do that because the amount of deaths for women who like need access to this kind of care, they're not going to get it. It's going to be a lot of stories about women either dying or women being like, they get these infections that are so bad that it leads to things like amputation. And so you're going to see women missing limbs, like they're not going to have an arm, they're not going to have a leg because they got so sick that you know, they weren't able to get an emergency abortion, and then all these other things happen to them. And unfortunately for some women, it's going to be that they ended up dying. And so people are going to be like, I'm afraid that this could be me. And so I don't want a chance having children. And so people are actually going to work really hard not to have any children. And then you're actually going to see sympathy from men as well, because men are going to be like, especially for people that are like coupled or partnered or married, men are going to be like, I actually really don't want to lose my wife. I don't want to lose my partner. And this is a risk. Like, I could actually potentially lose this person. I don't want to do that. And so people are going to start being a lot more careful. When this happens, then you're going to start seeing this push for outlawing birth control. They're going to try to make taking birth control criminal, and they're going to start calling it pre-abortion. They're going to say birth control is an act of pre-abortion. and they're going to try to get rid of birth control, which is going to be a bigger issue because obviously women are not just using birth control for birth control. There's all a bunch of health reasons that women use birth control, and it's not necessarily just for that. But they're going to start calling it pre-abortion, and they're going to start attacking different kind of birth control and birth control methods, and then try to make some of those things illegal. So what is it that you can do for yourself if you feel like this is something that would affect you, right? What you can do is just start studying up on like Eastern medicine, for example. There's not necessarily a need that you have to try to figure out how to replace. But when you are in a situation like this, where you're watching rights be repealed, right? It causes a situation where you're now concerned, and so reasonably, like you're like reasonably concerned for these things, right? And so the best thing that you can do is make sure that you make a choice, right? You want to retain your agency. You don't want to feel like, well, there's nothing that I can do, because there are things that you can do, right? And so you are going to now be proactive because you already see this thing falling apart. Remember, years ago, when we were all talking about the age of Aquarius, one of those things is the crumbling of institutions and societies. This is part of the crumbling of institutions and societies. It looks like it's chaotic because that is what happens when a society crumbles. It is a tower moment for the country itself, right? And so you have these people grabbing and taking hold of power, but their grab for power is actually what's pushing the crumbling of the society. That's actually the role of it. So they think that they're gonna like get the power, not realizing that their grasp for the power is actually what makes the country as a whole lose power. And so, but that is part of what the age of Aquarius was originally meant to do. It was originally meant to dismantle things because they don't work, right? And so you're going to have these people coming in with all of these crazy laws that they think is fixing things. That's the agenda that they're telling us about, but it's really actually dismantling. And it's dismantling because nothing about what they're trying to do is for stability. It's for control. And what happens when you try too hard to control? This came up a little bit last week. You get a revolution because it's not stable. Anyone that's under control will eventually fight back. That's just kind of how it works, right? You keep a dog in a cave in its cage too long, and then what happens to the personality of the dog that you keep in a cage for a little bit too long, right? Like, they bite. You back a bear into a corner, and then what happens? It bites, right? And because it doesn't have anywhere else to go. And so, yeah, you can be shooting sleeping darts at a bear, cornering it, and it may be backing up from you in fear. But once the back touches that wall and it realizes it doesn't have a choice, that the only choice that's left for it to do is to fight to get out, then the instinct kicks in. You're now dealing with an animal. As humans, I say this all the time, humans are animals. We, for some reason, like to think that we're better than the animal kingdom, but we are the animal kingdom, and humans do the same thing. And so you can intimidate, and yeah, you will have a situation where the human is backing up in fear. But once that back hits the wall and there's nothing else left, the choice of fear is then removed from the table. The only thing that's left is that the instinct kicks in, and then it fights back. And now you have revolutions, right? So that is actually where the country is headed. If it goes back to Trump, that's where it's headed. Another thing to keep in mind and look out for is that empires have an average year, right? Empires last on average about 250 years before they crash and burn, before they fall, right? The US currently is on its 245th year. The US was established 245 years ago. That means we have time for one more presidential administration. And if it goes the way it looks like it wants to go, that gets us to our 250 years. And if they enact all these things that they say that they're going to enact, then there goes your revolution, there goes the fall. Okay, so just remember that this is actually part of the whole thing. It's part of the divine. It's just part of the process. But you also have to remember that it's not your process. Remember, all of this shit's made up, right? Remember that we're still in a simulation. And what we see is what we collectively choose to see and what we choose to see on an individual level. So there's multiple different kinds of realities. There's a reality that we will tune into as a collective that we can see. All of us saw that man get shot, right? That's this collective reality. But then there's also a reality on a personal level that where reality changes and is different for everybody. So, like, have you ever met somebody, this person can be in your family and you just may think you love them, but you just don't know what world they be living in. They just be on a cloud somewhere, maybe literally high on a cloud somewhere, and your views are not their views and their views are not your views. And the world you live in are just so different, right? That is a difference in reality. You share the same collective reality, but that individual reality is different. And my world is not like your world. If you came and you stepped into my shoes and you wore them for a week, you'd be like, what? And then if I stepped into your shoes and I wore them for a week, I'd be like, what? It's not the same thing. We're not actually experiencing the same thing, right? So you can have a situation where, like, what I want to think of a common example that I see this on social media. On social media, I'll be scrolling and then I'll see a random video where it'll be like, is everybody else broke? Like, is everybody else struggling trying to pay for groceries? And I'd be watching that like, no. No. People be like, is everybody having a hard time dating? And I'm married. So I'm like, no. I get where you're coming from, but no, because it's not my reality, right? And so it's the same concept when you're dealing with whatever that is that they're about to do. You have agency and you can choose whether or not that is going to be something that impacts your life or it doesn't. And the way that you do that is by allowing yourself to understand what it is that they're about to do and then just plan ahead. Just be like, okay, they're going to try to put up that one barrier. That's not going to work for me. And that's not going to work for my life and my reality that I choose for myself. So I'm going to learn how to take care of that need for myself in a different kind of way. And that may mean that you are researching, asking questions, finding groups of like-minded individuals that are doing things the way that you do yourself, right? It may mean that you do your own thing, right? But know that, like, you still have choice. Because the people that this impacts are the people that's afraid. Because once you get to the point where when you're afraid, you start to feel like there's nothing else that you can do, or hopeless, right? So maybe not afraid, maybe just hopeless. Maybe people are tired from watching the country go through all of this for X amount of time. So there's a feeling of hopelessness that's sinking in. You have to understand that that's actually what they want, which is why they're so persistent, right? The idea is that you hold out longer than your opponent. Right? The idea is that you tire your opponent out, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not actually tired yourself. You just have to outlast that particular opponent. What is that saying from Survivor? Survivor has a saying where it's like outwit, outplay, outlast. That if you want to win Survivor, that you have to outwit, outplay, and then outlast, right? This is what this is, right? And so, but you can choose not to play the game. And when I say choose not to play the game, you also have an ability to choose what pieces of the game you want to play if you want to play it at all, right? For example, if you feel like I'm going to choose some pieces, but not all of them, you can choose, for example, exercise your democratic right before they try to take them away, i.e. voting, right? And then you may say, but this other stuff that you got going on, I'm going to go configure my life to look like this so I don't have to live with that. There are people that don't even deal with the government. You recognize that, right? Like people that live off grid, things like that. They do other things that they don't even know what's going on in the news. They probably don't even know that Trump got shot. So it's like one of those things where you can make the choice of what kind of life you want to live. You can still pursue the things that it is that you want to pursue. You can still go after your goals and your dreams. It's not supposed to stop you, but you have to choose that it's not going to stop you. If you give up your agency and you say, well, it's hopeless anyway, and there's nothing I can do about it, then that is when you become affected by what is actually happening, right? But you don't have to do that. There's another choice, and the choice is to choose you and to not participate in whatever it is that they got going on. Now, because they're still going to be putting up barriers that are systemic, remember that you still have the reality that is part of the collective as a whole. You still have your collective reality. And so your collective reality will still be seeing it. So if you scroll through the TV and you stumble across CNN, like you're still going to be seeing it. And so this will help you in order to prepare, because you'll have at least some kind of information about what they're working on and what they're doing, right? And so you can prepare. You can adapt, right? You can do what humans, animals do, which is adapt and evolve. This is going to be difficult for people that are stubborn. This is going to be difficult for people that are like, this is not the America that we were supposed to be. Those people. This is not the America I used to know. When I was a kid, this isn't what we used to do. Those people are going to have a really hard time with it. But we have to remember, nothing is stagnant. Everything changes all of the time. And so your job is to change with the times. Your job is to adapt. Ooh, when I stopped being afraid, everything fell in line for me. Promotions, relationships. Yeah, enhance yourself and trust your intuition. Follow your path. Absolutely, follow your own path. And then adapt, because fear is helpful when you are the perpetrator. Because fear makes people, all the things shut off. People start thinking that they can't do it, that they're hopeless, right? And then you have to also hope that like some people are different. Some people, the instinct kicks in at the same time as the fear kicks in. But other people, the fear will sort of subdue the instinct for a little bit. And so that's why when you like snap out of it, you're like, I don't even understand why. Why was I like that? Like that doesn't feel like me, because it was like subdued for a little bit, right? So it's your job to keep it moving. It's your job to adapt. And it's your job to continue moving on and pursuing the life that it is that you actually wanted to be pursuing in the first place, right? And so one way to do that is, one, by accepting that you can't fix it, right? So you can't fix anything that's not your own reality. The collective was decided by the collective. It is what it is, right? What's happening by, I don't know, your friend tripping is being decided by your friend. If they want to trip, that's what they're doing, right? Your mean boss, you can't change that person. That is who they are, and that's who they want to be for now. You can't do anything about that, right? So understand that there are things that you just can't fix. And so surrender that. Don't feel like you have to stay in a situation in which you're like, I got to control this. I got to make it. I got to fix this. No, you don't have to fix it. And you also can't fix it, right? It's not your job to fix it. It's also really not your business to fix it. A healthy amount of fear is motivation. Too much we shut down. Too little we become reckless. Really reckless? I'm actually very risk averse. So I don't even know what it really feels like to be reckless. Actually, that's like when I drive, if I go 75 on the highway, I'm like, oh, like, and then I slow back down, and then I cruise at a solid 69, which really pisses Atlanta drivers off, by the way. So, yeah. But no, you can't fix it, and you can't fix the situation, right? So this is going back to, how do you create the life and create the reality that it is that you want for yourself? It's by you making those choices. But sometimes when you're making these choices, you think that you can bring people with you, right? And so some of the things that need to happen is that things need to be surrendered. So you got to surrender people, and you can't fix it. You got to surrender certain situations, and you can't fix it. Sometimes you'll have a falling out with a person and you want to fix it. You want to fix the situation. If I can just go and explain myself, if I could just have one more conversation, right? Sometimes you just have to surrender that the situation is what it is. And then what happens is that people will start looking for all this meaning. Well, what did it mean? Did it mean that we weren't supposed to be together forever, that we're not supposed to be friends, and all this kind of stuff? Sometimes you also have to surrender this idea that everything has meaning. Sometimes it happens because it happens. Sometimes it happens because it was supposed to happen. Sometimes it happens because where you are headed, that was the path of least resistance. Sometimes it doesn't necessarily have all of this additional like meaning, right? Or information, or like it's this or that or the third. It doesn't necessarily always have to mean something that's so deep. Sometimes it just needs to be surrendered in order for you to go ahead and move on, right? So coming back to the idea of fear, a lot of you are going to be in this process of surrendering your fear of change. And the reason why is because we are changing on a collective level. The change is in the collective energy as a whole. And because we're in this energy of revealing truths, we are in this energy of revealing lies, right? People are going to be going down, institutions are going to be crumbling, things that on a weird subconscious level we found safety in are not going to exist, or they're going to be falling apart, or we're going to be recognizing that those things are actually really weak and really vulnerable. And so it's going to start prompting and pulling things up in you and making you examine certain aspects of yourself. It's going to be making you examine things about you that you can change. Because remember, your reality is a mirror of everything that's going on internally, right? It's still mirrors of different aspects of you, because it is you, because you are the creator, right? And your reality is your projection. What you see is like a projector and a screen. It's just your projection, right? And so when you start to see things on the outside that are not in alignment with what you want to be, or what your higher self wants to be, then it's going to start bringing up questions within you about what to do about that, about what to change, about if you want to change it, if whatever, right? Like, but this idea of growth and evolution starts to come to the forefront. And then this starts bringing up this idea of needing to change. And what people will find is that sometimes in order to change your internal reality, your external reality will have to shift, or your external reality will shift as an effect of that change that you made internally. And when that starts to happen, people start to do this thing where they're like, whoa, 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 stop. Wait a minute. Everyone stop moving. Stop that. Just give me a minute. I wasn't ready. I thought I was ready. I'm not ready. Right. And then people start trying to pump the brakes on it. And so the best thing that you can do is surrender the fear that you have to change. Surrendering the fear that you have to change it, because change is constant. Everything is changing all of the time, right? Like literally 1 minute ago is gone, right? That is now the past. 1 minute ago, it's not coming back. It is what it is, right? And so it's changing anyway. Life will change anyway. And so you can sit there and be stubborn and try to pump the brakes on it, but it's still going to change around you. And so it's not going to be helpful for you. So as collectively, there's going to be the shift in this change. It's going to bring it up in you, and you are going to start feeling this nudge to change, to improve, to evolve, to sort of like blossom into the person that you are, but you just have forgotten that you were already, right? So how do I do this? How do I move forward? How do I do this change? Because part of this change will have to do with how you see yourself. It's going to have to do with my mom. Stephanie adores you. Give her a shout out. She's watching. It makes her day. Hi, Stephanie. Oh, that's so sweet. Hi, Stephanie. Hi. Oh, I really appreciate that. That's so cute. That's so cute. Ah, love it. Love it. Okay. So in the spirit of changing, right? So like, how is that going to look, right? How do you change? Because the thing is, sometimes changing involves other people or involves people from the past, right? And so what I mean by that is that, let's say you want a loving relationship, but you would feel like you're closed off because you've had such horrible relationships in the past. People have done you dirty. People have been mean to you. And so you're trying to date and put yourself out there, but like you're just closed off, right? You know that you need to change because you know that in order to get what you want, it's going to require some change. But then you pump the brakes on it because you're like, well, no, so-and-so from 10 years ago really hurt my feelings and I could never, right? Part of what's going to help you move through the change faster is allowing yourself to resolve your resentments, right? So resentments are probably like the biggest cause of pain, of guilt, of sadness, of grief, of shame. It's all coming from resentment. So you're going to have to get to the point where you allow yourself to resolve your resentments, right? And resolving your resentments doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have an opinion about what happened or that you don't have an opinion about what someone did or said, but it does mean that you now are willing to let go. because you understand that letting go lets you move forward. You understand that holding on to something is so heavy, it's too much baggage, it's too much luggage, that walking with it is so heavy that it's just slowing you down. And you understand that it's to your benefit in order to release it, in order to allow yourself to go forward. Right. And so for a lot of you, when it's coming to like change, or even like, you want to change your life, you want a different kind of job, or you want a different lifestyle, but you're just so scared because of taking the steps, or feeling like, I don't even know how I'm going to get there. And I'm not entirely sure if I'm all that worthy in order to do it. Right. I'm not sure if I'm all that worthy to get these things that I actually want to have. Right? You have to resolve the resentments. You have to resolve the resentments of that person that hurt you, that person that broke your heart, that person that called you stupid, that person that said that you weren't going to be able to do it, or that you would never amount to much, or that you're never going to be successful. You have to resolve that. You have to resolve the resentment. And the way you do that is simply by being willing. There isn't a candle that needs to be lit, right? You don't have to like go see a priestess and then like do some elaborate spell and then light a candle. You only have to be willing, and then spirit, the universe, your higher self, whomever will take the rest of it, right? You just have to be willing to release it, willing to let it go, right? And the way you do that is simply by saying, I'm willing to forgive whoever. I set you free. And then not think about the rest of it. Because what you're doing is understanding that what happened doesn't mean that you don't have an opinion about it. It just means that you recognize that it's holding you back and you would like to move forward. And by letting these resentments go, then it's going to be easier to move through the process, easier to change, easier to evolve, and easier to sort of create this life or this reality that you actually see for yourself. But you have to start letting things go first, because the reality that you see for yourself is a lighter reality, right? It's a more prosperous reality. It's a happier reality. It's a reality filled with joy and love, right? And so if you are holding hate, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to get there. If you are holding sadness and grief, it's going to be a little bit difficult to get there. If you are holding on to shame and you're holding on to guilt, it's going to be harder for you to take those action steps that need to be taken in order to go where it is that you want to go. So you have to release it. And you simply do that by being willing to release it. You don't have to know the ins and outs of how it gets released. You just have to be willing to let it go. Because once you're willing and it's sitting in your energetic field, it'll start to sort of float away on its own. The energy will start to dissipate because you're willing to let it go. Because we have to remember, energy is moving all of the time. Energy is not meant to be still, and it's not meant to be stagnant. It's always moving all the time. And so what you're doing is doing this, and you saying, I'm willing, right? Like, I'm willing to forgive. I set this person free, right? I'm willing to let it go. You take this motion and you do this, which energy loves, because it's not meant to be still and it's not meant to be stagnant. That's why when energy sits in the body for too long, you get sick. And when an energy piles up in a particular part of the body, that is the part of the body that actually ends up getting sick, right? So it loves the fact that you want to let it go. It loves the fact that you're willing to release it. And that tight grasp that you're holding onto it, the moment you say that you're willing, it loosens a little bit. And then all those little holes that you have like this, for example, energy will start to sort of seep out of it. The energy you were holding will start to sort of leave. And then over time, you'll realize that it doesn't have such a hold on you. And so what you're going to do is every time that thought starts to creep back to you, you're going to repeat it again. You're going to say, I'm willing to forgive. I'm willing to let it go. And you're going to continue to repeat it every time it's in your awareness and that you notice it's still there, because every time you're repeating it, the hand is getting more and more and more open until it's so open that you're not holding it anymore and that it's gone. You want to release your resentment, so in order to lighten yourself up, in order to go and do whatever it is that you want to go and do. Because right now, the life that you're envisioning is really light and it's not in alignment or compatible with the heavier, denser aspects of life that you're currently living. Now, that does not mean that you have a heavy life or that you have a dense life. It means that you're carrying denser energies around with you that's not intentional. For some of you, a lot of the things that you're carrying are so deeply buried that you're not aware that it's actually being carried at all. And so as you start practicing resolving your resentment and letting it go, you'll start to notice that other little things that you've forgotten along life along the way will start popping up for you. And you'll be like, oh my God, yeah, that was a thing for me. I resolved that too. Oh my God, that was a thing for me. And I resolved that too. Right. When I did this exercise, how I did it was I did like a meditation, and in my mind, I pictured like myself almost kind of like sitting like kind of like at a table, like at a sign up table. That's how I can describe it, or like a registration table, and that like people were coming to be registered, and I had like a list and a pen, right? And the people that were being registered were people that I was willing to let go, right? People that I held resentments towards that I was willing to forgive. Didn't know how I was going to forgive them, but I knew that I was willing to forgive because I recognized that holding on to it wasn't helpful for me, right? That I had been carrying around years worth of hurt feelings and grief and trauma since childhood that I recognized wasn't going to get me where it was that I actually wanted to go. And so because of that, right, I had this sign up table and I sat there quietly. And then I was like, okay, the person that I held the most resentment towards immediately popped up in my mind's eye. And they walked to the table and I said, I'm willing to forgive. I set you free. And the way I saw it in my mind's eye was that person's higher self. So I'm communicating with the person's higher self, not communicating with the person, because not everyone's conscious, right? Not everyone has an ability to have such a conscious conversation, but I can communicate with their higher self. So I looked at their higher self and I said, I'm willing to forgive. I set you free, right? And then saw that higher self sort of float off like into the sky, like into the heavens, into the clouds, right? Then another person that I had resentment towards showed up. And I did the same thing, and then they floated off. And when I first did this exercise, it was actually really slow. Like, it was like I would do one person, and then I would wait a little bit, and then it would be like somebody else would come into the door and stand in front of me, and then I would wait a little bit. And then when I got really into it, when I tell you that line was so damn long, it was like, and you were free. And I was Oprah, just giving out fucking freedom. I was like, you're free, and you're free, and you're free, and you're free. And then what I realized I had an ability to do was, in addition to people, I had the ability to free up circumstances. So then it was like a circumstance, like an event that may have played out in the past that hurt me. Then I would see the event play out, and then I'd be like, and you're free. And then it's almost like a video clip would stop streaming, and then it would like float off, right? And so I realized that every time I would have a thought that was maybe kind of negative, that was towards a certain situation or a certain person, that it needed to be something that was released and set free, that it was resentment that I was holding on that wasn't helping me get anywhere. I wasn't going anywhere, and I wasn't going anywhere quick, right? And it was a lot of things where I was like, this is not a problem, forget them, like whatever. And it turned out that it was still sitting in my energetic field, and it was influencing how I made decisions about other things and other people, because I was holding on to hurt, pain, shame, resentment, guilt, whatever, right? Then after doing this, I did it for like 3 days. I had this moment where I was sitting in the chair in my meditation, and I was waiting for the next person, because at that point I had cleared out the line. And this is actually the part where I actually like broke out in tears and cried, because the next person that walked up to me was myself. It was my higher self. I was looking at my higher self that walked up to the table. And I realized in that moment that I had so much guilt and shame and anger and resentment that I was holding towards other people, and that some of that was a projection onto that person because I was ashamed of whatever reason of myself. I felt guilty for maybe something I said or I did. It was feelings of unworthiness, feelings of like just not being deserving, not being good enough. And I had used all of that as a reason for how I treated myself poorly. And so the last person that showed up in my meditation after like 3 days of doing it was me. And I looked myself in the eye and had to say to myself, I'm willing to forgive you, and now I set you free. I had to set myself free. And it was such a profound exercise because I didn't realize how much different situations, different people had colored the view of myself. Things that really had nothing to do with me that impacted how I saw myself. Things other people would have said that were really just a reflection of them, was a reflection of maybe where they were, was a reflection of their own self-limiting belief, was a reflection of their own trauma, their own fear, their own pain. I took it and then I made it mine. And then I used it as a way to color my perception of who I was as an individual. I used it as a way to color what I thought I could do or what I thought I was capable of. I used it to color how smart I thought I was, or at times thinking that I was really stupid. I used it to explore narrative that I wasn't lovable and that I would never be loved. I used it to create a narrative that I wasn't worthy of getting anything and I wasn't worthy of getting anything good, that I wasn't deserving. And why would someone pick me? Why would they do that? Why would you pick, like, I'm not good enough for whatever this thing is. I'm not good enough for this job. I'm not good enough for this opportunity. I'm not good enough to be in a relationship with. I'm not good enough to love, right? I used words that other people have said from my childhood up until being an adult, up until just recently, because I only just recently did this exercise where I used it as a way to frame the narrative of who I was, frame the narrative of what I wanted, frame the narrative of what I was able to accomplish and what it was that I was actually able to achieve, right? And so I realized it was so important that I allowed myself to resolve my resentments by forgiving and by releasing, because that was the only way that I was capable of actually releasing myself. Because when you start to unravel, you start to realize how much of it is actually you. And so, but with that, now everything else becomes more clear, right? Your decision making becomes a lot more clear because now you can actually hear yourself. A lot of the times why people will have problems making decisions for themselves is because they're not actually following themselves. They're following things that they've heard when they were 3, things that have colored and created their persona, what they view or think is actually themselves, which is it's not, but you wouldn't know that because it was something that was created when you were so small, right? And it's more than just like it's overhearing your parents complaining about money, right? So if you're overhearing your parents complaining about money as a child, you start to interpret things like that. But it goes deeper than that, right? It's also about resolving the resentment of things people said to you as a child. When someone looked at you and they told you you weren't going to amount to much. When someone looked at you and they told you that you were stupid. When someone looked at you and they told you that you were this or you were that, or that you had a teacher or some kind of authority figure or somebody that you looked up to who rejected you. If you had a sibling who rejected to you, especially if you're like the younger sibling, because younger siblings have a tendency to look up to older siblings, right? But they rejected you, right? These are very profound interactions that as an adult, we have a tendency to wave off, but we have to think about the amount of times things like that happen when the person was looking you in the eye, when someone looked you in the eye and they told you that you were not good enough, and how profound that is, and how we don't necessarily address or think about those things in society. But what kind of energetic exchange that actually might be, and how, of course, it can then sort of like anchor itself into your energetic being, into your energetic system, and then anchor itself into your belief system about yourself, as well as a belief system about what you feel that you may or may not actually be able to achieve. And so it's important that you go in and you start resolving the resentment, because that is what you're holding on to, right? Like, some of you got like pains that are in your chest, right? You always got anxiety. You don't know why it's there. Your chest is so tight. You don't know why it's there. All of that's resentment, right? Like if you think about back pain, right? A lot of people have back pain because they don't actually feel supported in life, right? Some things, yeah, are medical problems. I'm not saying take this and take this and not take what your doctor is saying, right? I'm saying that sometimes, yeah, there's a spiritual explanation because everything is energetic, right? If you've got lower back pain, you're not being properly supported by the people that are actually around you. You know that, and you probably have unspoken silent resentment towards those people for not stepping up in a way that you actually need to be supported, right? So it's living in you. And so what needs to happen is that you have to allow yourself to resolve, because it's not going to go away. That is the reason for a lot of chronic issues, right? Now, if it's like a one-off back pain thing, that's a different kind of thing. But if it's chronic, and you feel like you're doing everything, you've gone to the doctor, you've seen a chiropractor, you're exercising, you're dieting, you're stretching, and like you still have chronic lower back pain, it's because people are not supporting you in the way that you need. And you hold resentment towards those people for not doing that, right? So you want to just be willing, right? Be willing to forgive them. You don't have to know how. And then just understand, be willing to forgive them for not being who you wanted them to be. Forgive people for not being who you wanted them to be. Forgive people for not holding up to your expectations. Forgive people for that. Forgive people for potentially falling short in your eyes. And then just be willing to set them free. We have to remember that the majority of people are not conscious. They're not conscious individuals. And so you're looking at them like, why did you hurt me? They're probably thinking, well, so-and-so hurt me, and that person hurt me, and that person hurt me, and that person hurt me, and I've been hurt since I was a kid, and this is just how the world works. Get over it, sweetie. They're not conscious. So forgive them for not being who you wanted them to be. Because who you wanted them to be is based off of the potential that you had an ability to see in them that they weren't capable of seeing in themselves. Just like right now, I can see potential in you that you are not capable of seeing within yourself because you're still holding on to it. You have to clear out this stuff in order to see yourself properly. They can't even see themselves properly. If they could see themselves properly and they can understand how powerful they were, how divine they were, if they had more information, if they had more understanding, they would do it differently. But unfortunately, that's all they know. And so they are making decisions based off of all they know. And we have to realize that a lot of what people know is based on people doing it. It's based on them observing somebody else doing it and then picking up that pattern of behavior. It is based on watching their parents also try to figure out this game of life. It's based on watching other people do incorrect things but not being shown an alternative. And so that's all they know how to do. And so they don't know how to be their greatest version. They don't even know that there is a possibility to be a greater version. They think that what they are is all that they are, and that's all that they could be, and that there is nothing else. So they may need a little bit of forgiveness for not being who you wanted them to be. They may need a little bit of forgiveness for not being who you needed them to be. They may need a little bit of forgiveness for not living up to the expectations that you had for them. Because here's the thing about forgiving. It doesn't mean that you reduce your expectations. It does not mean that you clear out your boundaries and that you start all over. It does not mean that you are okay that they completely disrespected you or they didn't show up in the way that you needed them to show up for you. It just means that you forgive them for not being who you wanted them to be. And you forgive them for not being able to meet your expectations. And that now you're simply willing to set them free. Because why would you hold the density? It's too dense. It's too dense to hold on to energetic signatures of people, places, and situations that are not conscious. It's too dense. It's too much work. And then when you're doing this, your hands are closed. And now you want other things for your life. You want a different kind of reality for your life, but your hands are closed. And so you've got blessings that are lining up for you, that want you, that are in alignment with you, that are like, yeah, let's do this. Let's work together. But your hand is closed because this is your resentment. You're holding on to it because you're like, I'd be damned if I let this shit happen to me again. But why are you concerned that it may happen to you again? You know better now. When it happened the first time, your understanding was limited, your knowledge was limited, your experience was limited, but that's not who you are today. Why does it have to happen again? And if it happened again, why are you taking that as being a reflection of you and not recognizing that whatever happens, it can also be a reflection of a different individual? Or recognizing that sometimes that things that happen don't actually hold meaning or weight at all. That sometimes things just happen. And it doesn't really mean anything. It just was the path of least resistance. But while you're doing this, that thing that's supposed to land so beautifully in your hand has no place to go. And so you want to be willing to let go. So your hand is open and you have an ability to receive. So while you're doing this, understand that this does not mean that you forfeit your boundaries. Understand that this does not mean that you now approve of what occurred or took place, what was said, or what was done. This does not mean that you are willing to let that situation or that person back into your orbit. You are still maintaining your boundaries, but you are allowing yourself to resolve resentment and to release it in order to resolve yourself, to resolve your pain, your hurt, your shame, your guilt, your anger. Because of course, it's nice to be light. Of course, it's nice to feel light. And you deserve to be light. And some of you will feel like right now you don't deserve that. But by allowing yourself to resolve and line up the people that need to be resolved, you'll start to recognize that, in fact, no, that's incorrect and that you do. Right? So allow yourself to maintain your boundaries. And then if you get to a point where you find it being difficult, you have to examine, well, what is it that you think is true? If you're trying to forgive somebody for something they did or said to you and you find that that's hard, and remember, forgiving isn't approving of what that person did. Forgiving is simply willing to let go so you can move. Willing to let go so you can prosper, willing to let go for you because it's too heavy to hold. But if you find that it's a little bit difficult for you to do that, you may need to ask yourself, what is it that I believe to be true about myself that's making it difficult to do this? If this person told me that I'm a pile of trash and I'm finding that I'm having a really hard time resolving this resentment towards this person, does that mean that I agree? Does that mean that I think it is true that I am a pile of trash? And if that is the case, where is it coming from? Because it's not coming from them. It came before them. Where did it start? And allow yourself to start unraveling, because where it started may also need to join the queue. It may also need to be in the line. You may also need to resolve that resentment in order to fully let it go, right? So what is it that you believe to be true? On the flip side of that, if you're like, okay, I really would like to focus on resolving my resentment, but I'm not really sure where to start, because it may be a situation where you start to thinking, well, I know there's a lot of things wrong, but I don't actually know where to start forgiving. I don't know if I can start forgiving. I don't really, I feel like this is just a real big pot and I don't know how deep to go, right? It may be that you start with asking yourself that question. What do I believe to be true about myself? And then be honest, right? Because this spiritual journey, it's not about us hiding or concealing. It's about us releasing. Is it that you feel like you're not good enough? Okay, why? Where is it coming from? Is it because you feel that you're unworthy? Okay, why? Where is it coming from? Is it because you feel like you don't deserve something? Okay, why? What is it coming from? Right? Is it because you feel you're too stupid? Is it because you feel you're too fat? Is it because you feel you're too skinny? Is it because you feel you're too old? Right? Do you feel like you're not talented? Do you hate that you feel like you don't have that much creativity? Do you feel like you're ugly? Do you feel like you get too much hate for being pretty? Where is it coming from? Identify where it's coming from. Start with the question, what do I believe to be true? And then identify where you picked up that belief system. And then it'll be somewhere within there where you will find the person or the situation that created that thought process. And in that lives the people or the situations that need to be resolved in terms of resentment. Because, for example, let's say you feel like you are just unworthy, right? And maybe your caregiver, your mother, your father, when you were a child, they told you you weren't good enough. Maybe you would come home with your report card, your grades weren't what they needed to be. They told you that you weren't good enough. Maybe they would say things to you like, you're smarter than this, right? And so maybe you have this thing where you also feel kind of dumb or kind of stupid, right? What they said created a belief system. But here's the thing about negative belief systems. We don't enjoy having them. We know it's negative. We know it's not self-serving. And it's actually really frustrating that we can't get rid of it, right? So what happens is that sometimes you'll end up resenting the belief system. And if you're resenting the belief system, you're also resenting whoever helped put it there, right? And then that may show you where the resentment needs to be resolved or who it needs to be resolved. So just ask yourself, well, what do I believe to be true? And then once you resent that, once you release it, once you are willing to forgive it and willing to let go, right? You need to then be like, well, what if it isn't true? You said that. I never said that about myself. What if it isn't true? What if it's not true that I'm unworthy? What if I'm very worthy, actually? In fact, what if it's not true that I don't deserve anything? What if I actually really deserve everything that I actually want to have? What if it's not true, right? Allow yourself to start countering, because as you're resolving these things, as you're releasing these things, it has to fill with something. And so you're going to have to take an active approach of putting better things there. Because if you don't take an active approach of controlling that space, controlling that mind space, other things will slip in and it'll replace it, right? Because we oftentimes think that we're not always in control of the mind, but that's not necessarily true. The mind is so strong that it will convince you you're not in control of it, but that's not actually true. The mind is so strong that it will actually agree with you. You'll say, I'm not in control, and the mind will agree to what you just said. And then create a reality where you're not in control, but you're actually controlling that, right? So as you're releasing and you've got all this new beautiful space of potential, what are you now replacing it? What isn't true? What is no longer true? And you start replacing those things. You're replacing those things with I am worthy. Yes, I am deserving. Replace all of that. And then while you're doing this, or while you're sitting in contemplation of doing this, right? And you're examining what it is that you want for yourself, because these kind of things will only trigger that kind of question, right? Once you start realizing what actually would happen, what actually went down, you start to try to figure out, well, how do I do something different? How do I do something else, right? You start to think about, well, I had this dream, but because this person did or said this thing, I dropped it, right? Because maybe I did pick up the belief that I wasn't good enough or that I wasn't smart enough and that I couldn't do it. And so then you'll drop it. So now you have to ask yourself, so now that I'm aware of this, why haven't I picked it up? Now that I'm aware that it's not true, what is stopping me from moving forward? Is it because I'm really hoping that somebody else does it? Is it because I'm really hoping that someone else gives me the opportunity? Is it because I'm hoping that I get a big break by somebody else? Is it because I'm hoping that somebody sees me? Is it because I'm hoping whatever that particular thing is, right? Whatever it is that you're actually hoping for. Is it because of that? And then you got to ask yourself, why are you waiting for somebody else to give you your dream when it's your dream? Why would you allow anyone that level of control, power, autonomy over your dream, over you as a creator? And allow yourself to sit with that, because that's going to bring up more questions for you. That's going to show you where there's more resentments that need to be resolved. And that is going to allow you to pursue what needs to be pursued in order to release those things and set them free, in order to continue on the path of creating the reality that you actually want to experience for yourself. I don't want everyone to hurt. I can't help, but I don't want everyone to hurt. That's because you're a good person. There's nothing wrong here, right? There is no dilemma. There is no problem. It's because you're a good person. You're probably an empath, but we have to understand that everybody has their path. and you cannot stop someone from themselves. The majority of pain is caused by the self, unfortunately, or it's caused by previous things someone may have done, and choices have reactions, and sometimes those reactions may be a consequence. But that is not your responsibility to hold, because everyone has their own path and everyone has had things that they've decided that they have wanted to do or experience in this lifetime. And you trying to be a shield of preventing that may actually be elongating the lesson that they originally intended to have from themselves, and elongating the lesson that you may have for yourself, which is to understand that everybody has their own path. You can still have compassion for people and sympathy and empathy for their journey and what it is that they're going through, but there also needs to be, you also need to be able to understand that everyone has their path, and that they choose it, and that they carve it, and that they've made it. And sometimes people do make a bed, and sometimes they're going to have to lie in it, but that it's not your job to be like, okay, let me fix the sheets. Sometimes people have to learn how to wash their sheets and fix it themselves. But that doesn't mean that you don't have compassion for them in the process. It doesn't mean that you are hard, right? Love is our natural state. And to deny that within yourself is denying your natural state. It's not about not feeling it or not experiencing it, but sometimes it's good to understand that your job is just to observe, that it's not to absorb. Does anyone else have any comments, questions, ponderings before we wrap? Because we've been here for a minute. I'll give you guys a second to think and type. Let me know what you're feeling. And if you're not feeling anything, then of course I can always just send you all to bed. How do you spread love without sacrificing yourself? Well, love is not something that's supposed to be spread. Love is a state of being. You are just love. You just exist as a state of love. And as you move throughout the world, that state, that feeling, that frequency that you're sitting at, other people will feel as they walk past you, and other people will benefit from it in that way. Other people will benefit from it every time you speak to them, every time you see them, maybe if you hug them. But love is a state of being. It doesn't necessarily have to be spread. Spreading love is a futile effort because not everybody has experienced its frequency. So you can spread it to somebody, but somebody that hasn't experienced the frequency of love wouldn't have an ability to identify it anyway. And then when that happens, then you take that and interpret that as rejection, or that you did something wrong. And then it makes you smaller, right? So you went from spreading love, which brings joy and happiness, to now feeling bad about doing so. It's just a state of being. Love is not something that you do. Love is simply something that you are. So you do it by just being yourself, not trying to be more of one thing or less of another, by walking in who you are in your truth at that moment. And as you encounter the world will encounter you. And some people will pick up on the frequency if they know how to identify it. Some people won't. They may not know how to identify it. But at the end of the day, that is that path. It's all about boundaries, right? I'm an empath too. And even when showing love, you still need to care for yourself. Yeah, but it's also just about being it. You're just love. You don't have to show it. You just are. People will feel it, you know? So like, for example, like when we think about our, like the 5 love languages, right? Like some people's love language is like let's just say it doesn't really matter which one. Okay, let's say gift giving, but it doesn't really matter which one. Someone may give you a gift and then be like, but I love you, right? You can feel that, right? You can feel that I love you, right? But for other people, gifts that doesn't mean anything. It's just a gift. It's not coming with the frequency of love. It came with the frequency of approval and validation. It means, do you love me? Do you still love me? Do you care about me? Am I approved? Do you still validate me? Do you still want to be my partner? It's not love, right? People go, oh, I like words of affirmation. Yeah, because it's validating. It's not love. And so you may be sharing words of affirmation with other people because you think, well, maybe they'll feel loved if I do this, not realizing that like they don't feel anything. And then you're like, but I told you I loved you. And they're like, okay. Because it's the frequency. It's not really what it is that you're actually doing. It's the frequency that you're actually holding. When you're holding, like when you are in the love frequency and you are around someone, they just feel loved by you. They feel honored by you. They feel protected by you. They feel seen by you. They feel understood by you. They just feel it. Anyone have an animal, a pet like a dog or a cat? And when they come and they give you love, are they saying or doing anything? Or maybe they're just sitting next to you and maybe they're looking at you. And you can feel in your being that what's being exchanged is love. And they're not doing anything but sitting next to you, right? It's just a state of being. I get that, like the wanting to help. I understand, because like, especially when you don't want people to hurt, you feel like that you can alleviate something. But I also, wanting to help, it doesn't help if that person isn't in a place of helping themselves. I can sit here and tell you until I'm blue in the face, you are so worthy. You are so deserving. You are meant to have everything you want to have and more. But if you are not doing the work to resolve what needs to be resolved within you in order to feel it on your own, you may appreciate that I've said those things, but it's not going to make you feel it yourself, right? So when you are helping someone, they may appreciate that you're trying, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they are relieved or that they're resolved, right? People still have to help themselves. And sometimes that is the best form of help you can be, as a support system. Understanding that they have their own path, understanding that they may not take the path that you would have taken, but being like, but I'm here to support if you need me in the future, And for example, like with family members, I've got family members that I don't understand their reality. Our realities just do not line up, and they make choices that I would never make for myself. But I had to come to the resolve within myself that me helping them, and I thought I was helping, but it wasn't helpful. I was doing things that I would have wanted for myself or that I would have needed, or things that I would have been ready to receive based off of where I was in my own sort of self-healing journey. And I had to accept that that's not where they were in theirs. And then I had to back off and be like, you know what? If one day, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you need help, find me. But I'm going to enforce the boundary. And the boundary may be distance, but when you're ready, I'm here. And that may be how I lend help. But actively helping someone that's not ready to receive it isn't doing anything but hurting you. As always, this resonated and I appreciate you. No questions right now, but it takes me a while to absorb. Totally get it. I'll be marinating on all of this week. Thank you. You are so welcome, dear. I lost my husband a little over 2 years ago, and it's been hard caring for myself because I care so much for others that I wipe myself out because I don't want to hurt them too. That is so true. Everyone, it feels different. Yeah. And I'm so sorry to hear that you hurt your husband. I mean, that is awful. Any loss is awful, and losing your love is awful. So I do want to, hold space for you and validate your experience. And thank you for sharing that with us, because you didn't have to share that. A bit off topic, but are you still working with the collective, and how is that all going? Which collective? I work with all collectives. Which collective are you talking about? And yes, I haven't severed ties with any collective. Now, how I work with them has shifted a little bit in terms of all the collectives, but tell me which collective like you're talking about, and then I can further elaborate. Which collective? I'll give it a few more seconds. Are you typing? I'm always really curious that when I ask a follow-up question, is there a moment of panic as you try really hard to type and then also avoid grammatical errors before sending? Or is it a situation where the person has just left the live and they're actually not here anymore? And I'm like waiting for an answer, but like it's not coming. Which collective? I will say, while we're waiting for that, girl, all of them, what's the T? I mean, I still work with them. There is no T. A lot of it is just guidance and it's guidance for people. But I also find that it's changing in how it's coming out. It's coming out a lot more in writing. Um, so much so that I'm actually like in the process of figuring like when I tell you the amount of books I've got in me, I don't even know where to start trying to crank them all out. Like it's one of those things where I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a lifelong endeavor. But there is no T. The aliens still be alienating. They're still there. And right now they're actually just monitoring. The group that I work with, I don't know if I told you guys this, but they've had a bit of a turnover. So there's actually a new being that's a part of the group that wasn't initially there, a part of the group when I first like I guess had contact with them. So like the team, like they're doing a little swappy. They're swapping out a little swapperoo type thing. But they're still there and they are observing. Sometimes they have things to say. Sometimes they're more so acting as advisors where I sort of ping up and then I ask them questions. But a lot of the information now is actually sort of coming out in like books. And so it's really related to like the information is really like it's actually what I'm already communicating to you guys right now. It's really heavy on the belief system thing. So I'll say, can I change? Is it something else? And they'll be like, no. Go hammer that in. And then I'll be like, okay, it's been a month. and they'll be like, no, go back and really go hammer that in. And then there's like this weird paradox where it's like, in order to assist with that shift, I have to also myself shift my thinking, understanding that like I'm okay with that shift. So it hasn't been so much collective as it's been them calling me out, really. Like I'll be like, okay, I've talked about this already for 2 weeks, and I'll be like, I think they're fine. They don't really need it from me anymore. But it's my phrasing that they don't particularly enjoy. So I'll be like, well, they don't really need it from me anymore, thinking that I'm moving from the perspective of because I've said it a lot that like maybe everyone gets it type thing. But then they'll be like, that's not really why that's the case. And that's not really why you're a little uncomfortable talking about it again. It's really because do you question whether or not you should be the one sharing the message? So it's kind of like that. It's very like personal. So like that is the outward message that they want. They want it disseminated. It's part of the shift in the tides that we're experiencing as a collective, as a society, is people understanding that they have power themselves, choices themselves, that they don't necessarily have to prescribe to what we are perceiving as a sort of collective consciousness, and that there is this thing that there needs to be, that people need guidance in that and like facilitation in that. And so a lot of the downloads I'm having is about that, like how to facilitate people through that process, because that's where liberation and freedom is coming from. Like, so it's not coming from a system and it's not coming from an institution, and it'll never come from the government. Leadership and liberation and freedom will always come from the self. And so that is the lesson, right? So that is the collective lesson, and they're sort of watching that kind of play out. There is like two factions. It's people that are trying really hard to board that train. And then there are people who are very much like they don't even know that there's a train station, right? So people that are very much drinking the Kool-Aid, but don't necessarily know that they're drinking the Kool-Aid. There's some people that are drinking the Kool-Aid, but like it's too sweet and they desperately want to stop, but they don't know where the water is, right? And so there is like this new wave and like this new movement. I'm downloading now again, which is why I'm staring off. There's this new wave of a new movement. And I talked about this briefly, but I haven't really elaborated or gone so deep into this. And this was like end of last year, beginning of this year. So it was a while ago when I initially brought it up. But there is like a new movement wave of like spiritual teachers. It's just going to be new faces. You're just going to be seeing new faces pop up. And you're going to be seeing like the veterans kind of go sit down. And by veterans, I don't necessarily mean like older YouTubers. I mean like older people, right? So people that were like big time spiritual teachers, like in the 80s, like I'm talking like that. Them going to sit down and there's a baton to hand off. And then the younger people and the younger faces. Okay, hold on. There's a lot and it's jumbling. So I don't know if I'm going to be making sense. I'm just going to be talking as it's coming in. So one of the things is that there's going to be a similarity between these people, right? And like what they look like. These people are going to look really, 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 really young, right? There's just going to be feelings that like, oh, this person sounds so wise, but they look so young. They're going to have this really young look. And it's just going to sort of be for all of them. And it doesn't matter what their age is. They're just going to look really young, regardless of whether or not they are or not young. They're just going to look young. People's features are going to be changing. And it's just sort of an energetic way to identify them. But it's only if you're like tuned into it. So for example, the people who are like actively working on their spirituality will be able to perceive it. But like people who are not conscious won't. So for example, let's say you're 45, right? And like, let's say you are a spiritual teacher. You've got people coming to you. They are conscious. They're awake. They'll be able to perceive the energetic signature and they'll be able to look at you and you're going to seem very young to that person. You're going to look very young. They may even say to you, you look so young, right? But if you come into contact with people who are not conscious, just your regular everyday person, to that person, you're going to look 45. I don't know why that's relevant, but anyway, it came in just now. I just think it's just an energy thing. It's just a frequency thing or whatever. But anyway, so there's this switch, there's this change in spiritual teachers. And so there's going to be new faces popping up and they're just going to look really, really young. And all the veteran people, so the people that were like high in the 80s, like they were known in the 80s, they were popping in the 80s, they were doing this work in the 80s, they were doing it before it was cool, they were doing it when it was still called woo-woo. They're all now going into retirement. There is this metaphysical, spiritual baton that's being handed off as if people were running a relay race. Where we're at in the collective at the moment is that some of those people that have a baton don't know why they're holding it. And so it's more than just like getting a new wave of spiritual teachers. Those spiritual teachers are currently in the place at the moment of trying to understand and accept that that's their role, because all of them are dealing with the same thing. They're dealing with like things like imposter syndrome, that worthiness thing, like could I really be the person that talks about this and people actually listen to whatever it is that they have to say? So that's actually happening. And so you'll be seeing new faces, but it's almost like there's this thing, and I don't know if it's social media, right? But you'll be seeing people grow as they grow. And as it's weird. Like you'll be kind of like on the journey with them as they're growing and they're accepting their new role as like this person, right? And so that's a huge shift that's actually happening right now. And like spirituality is going to be huge, like huge, like in like 2 years, like you're going to see a collapse of religion. You're going to see a very sharp decline in religion and organized religion, and a very sharp increase in just like spirituality and itself and consciousness, or trying to understand consciousness. This feeling of people going, I know that there's more, I just don't know the words and I don't know how to explain it. You're just going to see a real big interest in that. And because of that, there is a point of delicacy and vulnerability. Because as people now start looking for a new God, right? They're looking for a new reason, a new answer. it can be a situation where it goes either way, where you have the current establishment come up with a new plan or an agenda to sort of grab hold of those people again that are leaving, or they'll just sort of go to the other way, which is sort of the more spiritualist sort of way. And so they're monitoring that. The collective is monitoring that. And they're also kind of like helping train and shape people. And by train, I really mean, I hate that's actually not really the right word because it sounds so 3D, as if like you're going to boot camp, because it's so not what it is. But there is definitely like an emphasis on self-development and like getting those people where they need to be, and in a self-development kind of way, and a way that's required, that wasn't required for the previous generation of teachers, right? Mostly because of the probability of public recognition, because the way we share and we communicate now is done on the internet. And that wasn't the case before, right? So you could like rise to prominence as a spiritual teacher, but like no one knew where you lived, and like no one could really get to you outside of what you were doing. And so even though it may have been considered woo-woo or like taboo, once you finished a workshop on a Saturday and you went home, you went back to being who it was that you were. Whereas now we're kind of going into an era where that may not necessarily be the case. There'll be people that like rise like publicly through no fault of their own. They're just talking and like trying to share guidance, and then it just sort of catapults them that way. And so there's like this it's a different kind of need, not necessarily a greater need, but a different kind of need for self-development, and like having a certain kind of resolve within who you are as an individual. Because should that be the case for some of these people, it would be noisy, and you're going to have a lot of conflicting and competing ideas. And like, for example, if you're teaching things about belief systems, this emphasis on really needing to understand what your personal belief system is in order to hold on to it. So one, you can teach it, but also should there be a case where you have like some kind of public opposition, that you are comfortable enough to hold it. So it's just a different kind of need for that, right? And so there seems to be some emphasis on that, which helps the greater good, because should you do that successfully, then you would be able to then help other people guide through also whatever they may be doing that's public, because everything we do is public, everything we say is public, and it leaves room for more eyes, more opinions, and like more scrutiny. So that's kind of what they're doing. That's what they're doing with me. There's a lot of information, a lot of download, and to the point where like I have resorted to just writing. And it's not cohesive, but it's just one of those things where it's like, at some point in time, I'll have enough stuff for like a book. I just don't know. And it's just a lot of stuff, and it's just a lot of downloads, and a lot of it just, but that's really what it's doing. It's a lot of self-development, but there's like, that's the purpose behind it. So yeah, because the veterans are going to go sit down. They're all literally retiring, quite literally retiring. And so their teachings are being passed on. It's actually really also interesting because some of the teachings are actually downloaded. For example, there's this thing that's happening where like you have these veteran teachers that have like written books, but like because those books are written so long ago, some of the new wave teachers don't even know that those particular books exist, but they're still downloading the information. And then you're just realizing at a later time that, oh my God, this aligns, right? And so from that perspective, that's also really interesting because it's almost like confirmation that it's actually like downloaded information and that multiple people just received it. And it's almost like clarifying that like, okay, this is the right path and the right direction to be sort of going down. So, some of that's happening, but there's just going to be a new wave. There's going to be a new wave, new faces, new ways of teachers. It's going to be a whole new, it's not a new set of teachings. It's a new way that it's taught. Right. And so it'll be new thought, but it's not new thought. So there'll be like a new thought movement, but it's not new thought. It's actually very old thought. It's old thought, like emerald tablets level of old thought. It's just every wave. It's just a newer way of explaining it. And all of those downloads are coming in now with like the current new teachers. And then like, that's the information that's like slowly moving out. But right now it's slow. I think people would find that interesting because I think depending on how your algorithm is set up, if you're like on the internet, it looks like there's a lot of people that are like talking about it, but they're not really talking about it, at least not yet. Mostly because some of these people that you're seeing are still very new in their journey. And so the downloads that they have is like, it's the first level. I hate saying level because it's not really a level thing. It's not really about level in terms of ranking. It's about what you have an ability to comprehend at that time based off of like your conscious awareness and how long you've been doing it and like your understanding of it. And the more you understand and the more your awareness grows, and then it's almost like the more information you download. So levels in that kind of way, but not levels in like hierarchy. But so there's a lot of new faces that we're starting to see appear now, but they're still sort of in the beginning phases of it because they're still learning to understand it. And so right now you're seeing people learn to understand what they're saying, what they're receiving, and they're sharing it and they're sharing their downloads. But some of those people, it's not going to be happen for all of them, but some of those people will then start to rephrase how they're saying it in order to teach it so other people can apply it. But that's just part of like the development. And so anyway, in the collective as a whole, that's what's happening like spiritually. Actually, so I guess there was a lot going on with the collective. Yeah, it's a wait, when you say a different way, you mean in terms of like, actually, you got to tell me what that means. I don't remember. I've just said a lot of things. I don't remember. But I don't know. But yeah, that's what's going on. It's just there's a lot of development and it's collective. It's everywhere. And I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. But anyway, guys, it has been almost 2 hours. And so as I go to bed, I'm going to send you guys all to bed. And we will do this again next week. What time? Don't know. Probably Wednesday. But I'm still figuring it out. And give me grace as I figure it out as I sort of dance my way around the internet to figure out which corner of it I like and which corner of it works for me. But other than that, guys, I will wrap here. Have a good evening. I love and I appreciate all of you guys. And I will see all of you next week.